So today I thought I'd do a little video talking through how I made my last beat diary drum rack. So when I'm producing, I use Ableton, and I usually end up in drum rack, but a lot of the time before I get into my drum rack there's some work to do. So in this instance, the way I started my track off was to create what I call a stack. So a stack's basically a kind of full frequency range section. So sometimes I get them from other tracks, old jazz tracks, or splice. Sometimes, like this time, I've made it myself. So basically a stack is kind of a bunch of instruments playing like a chord progression with kind of bass line melody. So first of all, I'll play the stack on its own. So I've got it grouped up in Ableton here at the moment. That's kind of what it sounds like when the stack was finished. So I started off, I'll just stop all clips here by clicking this button here. So I started off with this piano sound, and actually I started off on YouTube originally looking at some tutorials, which was a good thing, and I was stuck for a chord progression. They all sounded a bit naff, so I looked at a guy called Stephen Guy's channel, and I found that he kind of demonstrated this chord progression, so I borrowed it. So as you can see, I wrote the chord progression down on a sticky note. There's D minor 9, G9 sus4, A9 sus4, C sharp diminished 9th if you want to use it as well, or if you want to check out Stephen Guy on YouTube. He's got some really good videos there. Yep. So that's kind of where I started off with that chord progression. I'm pretty sure I'm in a different version of what he was playing, because I programmed it in first inversion from chord charts on Google, but yeah, so I start off with that, and then the instrument I used was Roland's SRX keyboards, which I use quite a lot. So I've got quite a lot of the Roland instruments, and I just used, this is basically the first patch when you open it up. It's a stereo piano, but it's a really lovely sound, so I kind of stuck with that. Once I've got that in there, I've just did a high pass to get rid of the low end frequencies, because obviously I'm going to add some bass in later on, and I didn't need the bass from the piano. So moving over to the next instrument, this is a padded piano. This is also from SRX keyboards, padded piano, so I'll let you hear that on its own. You can see here it's got an EQ as well, but cutting off the lows and the mids. I just want the top end of this. So it's got a nice sweeping sound to add some kind of movement. Just play actually without the EQ on, just to let you hear it. Yeah, so I mean, really I could have used that on its own with the drum rack in it. It's a nice full range sound, but I decided to mix it up. So over here I've got, I think pretty much all these are, oh, this one's from the orchestra suite, so SSR orchestra. This one's got a harp and flute sound, and all these three here have basically got the same MIDI data, copy and pasted along, but just stacked just to kind of create texture. I'll play all three of those together at the moment as well. Sorry. So then we've got this so that's essentially my harmony section, my chords. For the next part I want to add was a melody part, and the way I've done that, so I've used the SRX keys again, so obviously I've been rolling heavy on this, and what I've done is take the MIDI data, I've copied it over from the chords, but I've basically used the same notes from the chords, but just kind of picked and choose and chopped things up again. I'll let you hear it. This is essentially this MIDI, but with lots of holds cut in it, really, to add rhythm and melody. So all the notes here are notes from that chord progression, but I've just kind of picked and choose the ones. Obviously as well, to kind of add dynamics to the sound, you can see I've used a lot of velocity data here as well. Just to point out as well, all the MIDI in here has been drawn in with a mouse. I was too lazy to plug a MIDI keyboard in and kind of learn the chords, so yeah, I do play keyboard, I can play keyboard, but sometimes I'm just too darn lazy. Okay, so next thing along is the bass, and essentially the bass, let's have a listen actually before. So the bass on here, I've used operator, and I've used something I use quite a lot. It's really, oh sorry, I'll go back to the Vibe before quickly, I've missed out. So I've got some EQ on here, I've chopped off the top end, and I've added some reverb on the channel as opposed to on a send, and I've got the dry wet kind of a third of the way up. So I'll just play it quickly with those off. So in here that's really very high pitched. For some genres would work, but for the kind of lo-fi stuff I'm going for, a lot of the time the top end's missing or reduced, and then without the reverb. So just adding a little bit of length to the sound, a little bit of depth. Okay, so here's our bass sound, and as I started to mention before, I've used operator for this. Is one of Ableton's built-in plugins I use a lot for bass, and it's essentially just a sine wave. So I'll play it on it. So you can see after it as well, I've got a compressor. The compressor, the ratio is really heavy. So I'll turn it, not really heavy, fairly heavy. I'll play it without the compressor on. Actually, and I've got the saturator on as well. I'll come back to why that's for. I'm going to take both off. So you can hear that's quite a soft sound. But you can hear that there, that change in volume. Getting louder, quieter. So what I want is my bass to be a solid volume. So with the whole point of compression is to reduce dynamic range, that being the distance between the lowest and the highest point volume of the sound. So I don't really want my bass being so quiet, louder, quieter. I want it to be the same volume all the time. So if I turn this on, it's just a less of a drastic. So I'm not sure I could fix it. Quite lash. It sounds. I'll try just experiment. Sorry, the attack. Time is just bothering me a little bit on this. Another thing with using a sine wave is its lack of harmonics. In other words, all you hear is a fundamental note. So what I've done after I've compressed is I put a saturator on. The reason for that is to make it kind of cut through a bit in the mix, higher up in the frequency range. So I'll just pop this on there. So it takes away from just being a bass sound and kind of adds a little bit of mid-range on. So just pop all these 4 in the mix together now. Just pop this over and hit this button. So that's the harmony, melody and bass line. Okay, so the next thing I've got in here as well is basically some foley, some texture. When I'm making my tracks, I love a little bit of dirt in there. There's a few different ways I do it. Sometimes I use kind of distortion plugins, like the vinyl plugin. The Abbey Road vinyl plugin by Waves is one I use quite a lot. But a lot of the time I like to just add kind of textures in from either basically sticking my iPhone out the window, or when I walk my dog, if I find a nice quiet spot and the birds are singing and there's planes going over, I'll sit down and just turn my phone on and record. Or sometimes I'll get things from a sample pack. So in this case I've got an ASMR texture sample. Sounds like this. You can hear it's got a little bit of panning automation already on the sample, and then on to that I've EQ'd it because I just needed to do a kind of low and high pass on it. In this instance I've used an EQ3. I've turned off the low and the high parameters in terms of the gain here, and I've used the kind of the crossover functions here to just kind of narrow down that middle frequency band. So you can see I've just kind of got rid of that low end, so the high end on, you can hear that kind of hissing, kind of pulled that off there. So I just want it in the mid range. Put that in the mix now. So I just add some non-harmonic padding to the sound, and then on top of that as well I've got this sound, and this is recorded from my house. Basically iPhone out the window, voice recording, emailed it over to myself. I've got a whole bunch of these in my sample library that I've just recorded from home that I use a bit. I try and record as many different ones as possible, just so you got a different variation all the time. So put them all together. So the next stage of this now is obviously getting this whole mass of things into my drum rack. So the way I do this, you could bounce out and bring it back in again, but the way I like to do it is using resampling. So in Ableton, you can basically set the input of a channel to the output of a different channel. So what I do in this situation is I send the audio from the stack into a new channel and record it into one audio channel. So the way we do this is down here in our routing section, we've got this kind of audio option. So generally when you open an audio channel, it's set to external in. In this case I can't do it because I've not got my big sound card plugged in. I've got no kind of audio input device, so it's not going to let me do that. But what I can still do is resampling. So resampling means basically whatever is playing in the Ableton set, anything else that's playing will to be recorded into here. So I have this put in here. I arm my track down here, and if I just click in here now, now got the chord progression in this channel. Okay. So that's how I get my stack in audio file to put in the drum rack. So what we'll do now, we'll put this stack away and we'll have a little look at the drum rack. So I'll just stop that for now because I'm going to do a bit of a Blue Peter job now. Okay, so drum rack is, as I say, it's the thing that makes my the MPD work really well. You can see down here we've got these 16 little pads that represent what I'm playing on my drum rack, and each one of them has some stuff on it. So I'm just going to down this right hand side here, sorry. Now I've put the stack. So this, I always have my stacks, my kind of harmonic content, loops, etc. down the right hand side, because that's kind of what my right hand's focusing on when I'm playing. Whereas my right hand basically is playing with the right hand side of the pads, my left hand's playing these ones. So if I play this, oops, I've got it muted, 2 seconds. So you can see I've got the first chord there, and the way I've kind of split that up, it's basically when I've dragged and dropped the, actually I'll do it just to show you. So this is the kind of the process. I drag and drop this into here. What I'll get is the whole chain, the whole chord progression, stack, sorry. Now what I'm going to do is basically, sorry, that was the MIDI from the actual the take I did for the video before. So you can see that's been the whole thing. So what I'm basically doing here is, once I get in here, this is the simpler device. As soon as you drop any sound into the Ableton drum rack, it'll turn it into a simpler. So it's a simple sampler, and basically I drag that along here now. Then I've basically just got that first section. Sometimes when I drag things in, I don't think I've done it in this case, but just to kind of mention it, what I will do is give it a little, if it sounds a little bit clicky, as at the beginning of the end, sometimes there's a little click there. Just hear the end of that. I'll just give it a little fade out. So on here we can fade in and fade out, so it's kind of give a volume automation for the sample. So I put that kind of there. Just giving that fade in. Kind of emulates sidechain as well, so nice bit sweeter. Actually, I'm going to do this to all of them now. Sounds a bit nicer. And then on this one, obviously, I've copied the same sample in, but moved this over here. Another way, instead of copying it in, you can actually just copy this. So I right click on here, copy it, kind of paste it there. Try to do that just to make it a bit more obvious. So on the second one here, I've copied this one, click on this one, paste it. Then you can kind of start with the one you've already had and kind of move it around, and then you can just copy and paste as many times as you need, as many different variations as you want of the chord progression, many different chops as you want. Quickly just to give this a little fade in. So the next thing that's really important is that I've done here, I've put all these samples, all these instrument racks in what's called a choke group. So when you've got your thing, but this originally wasn't a no choke group, but what a choke group does is it stops things from playing when another one in the same choke group plays. So for example, if I just turn these all off, I'll give you an example what it sounds like with no choke group. So now you can see it basically when you hit this one, then the next one, they both keep playing. So for some sounds that's cool. For example, if you play your kick and your snare at the same time, that's cool. You play your hi-hats and actually hi-hats is one you might, if you have a closed hi-hat and an open hi-hat sound, you might want them to open and shut. I think I've probably done that here. I'll move to that in a second. But for the harmonic samples, it's definitely 100% essential to kind of avoid dissonance and muddy mix, that you lock them into a choke group. So I'll pop in here now. You can come here. Cool. Alright, so that's the stack in the drum rack. So the next thing, obviously I'm looking to do once I get in here, is to add drums. So on here I've got a kick drum that's an instrument rack. I'll show you what I've got a snare that's an instrument rack. So what is an instrument rack? Basically it's when we start stacking sounds together. So in here, what I've got for my kicks, I've actually got two kick sounds. So I've got this one, and I've got this one. So you can hear it, and then put them together, you get that. So what I'm looking for here, this one has got a nice kind of low end thud. This one has got, should be highlight, you can see I've just used a tiny, I've actually just used the attack of a kick. So I brought a kick in, and what this one I feel's missing is a bit of kind of smack to get in the mix. So I've taken another kick drum that had a good kind of click on it, and I've just added the click in. And the way we do that is by creating the old instrument racks. And the way to create an instrument rack, in here I'll just quickly show you as an example. If we take a, so for example, I'm just going to use another pad for now. Take that there, and then if I right click on that and say group, then open this bit up here. So this shows you, then basically gives you, you can drop and basically build loads of samples up. So sometimes if I'm not kind of building stacks from a chord progression, something I made, if I'm kind of piling up samples to make different pads, I might do that for this, for those to kind of create like a stacked sound. But so if I put another one on here now, I'm just going to pick any old sample to be fair, just to show you the process. Now that pads both those samples. So I could go a lot further on instrument racks, but I won't right now. Alright, so turn that back on. So that's my kick. Then over here is my clap, and on here I've got 3 separate sounds for the clap on my kind of main clap sound. So generally in my tracks I have a main clap, and then I like putting snaps and stuff up the same row, so I can maybe have 3 or 4 different kind of snare type sounds, so sounds that perform the function of a snare or a clap, that mid-range kind of cutting offbeat sound. So in here I've got that one, I've got that one, a bit more aggressive, I've got that kind of dubby, timbali, sort of piccolo snare sound. Putting together, it's a fatter sound. In terms of looking at here, about see, I made any adjustments on the start of the sound. A lot of the time we have to make it. Yes, I've done a little bit of fading there. A lot of the time when getting the start of these sounds, where they start right, is really important, because sometimes we get a thing called kind of phase cancellation, which means that sometimes when you add sounds together, you expect more power, but actually they sound worse because of the phase. So that's probably a different video actually. And then up here we've got this click that's just on its Todd there. It's just a little snap verb. I use this sample loads. Okay, so that's not there. And then this one here is also, so this one here I've got a little bit of a sample that I've recorded on my phone. So that's just something I've recorded. I think actually, I recorded that with Roman, my son. When we were playing with his kid's percussion set, and then I've got a ride cymbal there as well, layered in with it for a kind of little bit length on it. So you put them together, you get this, and then up here, this is just me saying shh. So if I take so it's just me again recording on my iPhone because it's lo-fi and stuff, isn't it? Alright, yeah. Then this is here is Roman, my kid, saying it will be louder, because every time I'm producing stuff or we're recording anything and I do anything, he says, well, make it louder. So it's just a bit louder. And that was some percussion we were recording. He just said, I chopped it out. I put some reverb and delay on it, as you can hear. With them off, it's just a 4-year-old talking. Yeah, let's put it back on again. Cool. Next thing in here as well, on my rack, I've got set a return channel within here. So on Ableton, you've got your 2 return channels in here, and that kind of come at that you can add more. You can add more, but you can inside drum rack as well. If you turn on the return section and drag and drop a plugin in here, you can then have turn on the sends as well. You can't turn this on until you've got something in there. So if you try to turn them both on and that one doesn't come on, it's because you've got the send doesn't come on. It's because there's nothing in the return. But here I've just dropped in the Ableton's reverbs in there. 100% Wix is on the send. Don't want the dry signal at all. I've already got that. And in here I've got just so the main clap sound and the first heart sound going off to that, and that is my drum rack. Okay, thanks for watching.